and I'm super excited for us to hear from everybody. So welcome everyone. We'll keep letting people in as they show up in the waiting room, but this is the cafe from the Increasing Equitable Access to Nature initiative from Chicago Wilderness Alliance, one of the 7 Green Vision initiatives. And the focus of this conversation is learning from leaders in the field. Over the last year, really, we've been doing a lot of work around increasing information and spotlighting different groups that are leading in diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice work in our region and the environment. And we've had a lot of folks interested and curious to learn more from people's best practices, especially when it comes to creating accessible programming as well as inclusive programming for a variety of different identities and groups who've been marginalized from green space in the past. So my co-chair Radhika and I have put together a really cool panel of people that we admire, and we're super excited to have this space for us to all learn together and build community around some commonalities and how we go about creating inclusive programming in our different organizations. So I also just want to really quickly thank Illinois Department of Natural Resources and the USDA's Forest Service and the Urban Community Forestry Program. Because of their sponsorship, we're able to do these cafe series, which is really wonderful and helps build out our presence as an alliance and share information and get to learn about cool things that are happening. So with that, I will pass it over to Radhika.
Hi, everyone. I'm Radhika Miraglia. I am the program director at Friends of the Forest Preserves and co-chair of this initiative with Dani. I just want to pause a second to see, Brandon, did you want to say anything about Chicago Wilderness and the initiatives, or should we just jump in?
Thank you for the opportunity, Radhika. I think we should just jump in because we have so many great panelists today.
Great. Will do. So yeah, we have a wonderful panel of leaders who are leading programming in the field of environmental sustainability, conservation, biodiversity, and we are really excited to have a discussion with them about their journey and the things that they keep in mind every day in terms of being creating inclusive programming. So we have, I'm just going to introduce our panelists, and they're going to respond with just saying their pronouns and their title and one person or somebody that inspires them in their work. Okay. So Brenda Elmore is the production manager at Friends of the Forest Preserve. She's been with us for about 15 years, or she's been in the field for 15 years. Brenda?
Thank you, Radhika. So yes, as Radhika said, I'm Brenda Elmore. And yes, I have been doing this work out in the field for about 15 years. My pronouns are she, her, and I just have so many people that inspires me. I can't really narrow it down, but I'll just go broad. I'll say right now, the people that are inspiring me are the people that are out there newly being introduced to this work in the less fortunate or communities that are somewhat introduced to this work and then thrive with it and learn something new. And then when they learn better, they do better. So that's what inspires me.
Thank you, Brenda. Next, we have Vicky Koch. She is the Director of Operations at Chicago Adventure Therapy. Vicky?
Hi, everyone. I do go by she, her pronouns. Thank you for having Chicago Adventure Therapy on this panel. So someone who inspires me is my mom. I don't mean to sound corny, but, she immigrated here from Mexico to give, us a better life. And regardless of the extreme challenges that she's gone through, she continues to be confident, courageous, while carrying a good sense of humor and excitement for life to keep moving forward, which in this work you really do need. It's hard work sometimes, and the struggle is real. And, it just thinking of her reminds me that, you know, there is a way to keep moving forward, even if it's not all positive, right? You can turn it into something more positive, and you continue to work hard, and that's just, you know, what it is. But it's important to remember who you are and to keep yourself in a good space to be able to continue that work.
Thank you. And we have CJ Greco, who is the Student and Teacher Programs Facilitator at Lincoln Park Zoo. CJ?
Hello,
Welcome.
yeah, thank you. I'm so excited to be here. Yeah, CJ, I use they and she pronouns. I'm the Student Teacher Programs Facilitator, Lincoln Park Zoo. I've been in the field of informal conservation education for a long time. I started volunteering when I was just 11 years old, so it's been almost about 15 years since I started. And you know, someone really who inspires me to continue doing this is all of the program participants who I work with. You know, all of the incredible young people who I get to work with on a daily basis are my constant source of inspiration.
All right,
Beautiful.
welcome everybody. I will hand it over to Dani, who is going to moderate a discussion for everybody to enjoy. And then toward the end of the program, we'll leave about 10 or 15 minutes for Q&A. So if you have a question or a comment, you can pop it into the chat, and we will make sure that we get to as many questions as we can. I have a feeling we are going to be short on time, but we will do our best.
Fingers crossed. It's always the best when we have lots of questions or lots to talk about. So I'm super excited to be here. I'm not sure if I even introduced myself because I was just super excited to jump into this conversation. But my name is Dani Abboud. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Director of Community Programs and Partnerships for Brushwood Center, an organization that focuses on the intersection of art, nature, and health. I think I'm like CJ, very inspired by the young people and the families that I get the honor and privilege of working with. So many folks, similar to Vicky's admiration for her mom, so many folks who are recent immigrants to this country that find new ways to connect with a different land, but still find ties back to familiar things, plants, animals, experiences that they had growing up in their homes. Or their home countries, and being able to share that with each other, with their kids, with me is always so wonderful to find our ancestral ties to land, no matter where we are. So I'm always excited by that kind of experience. But enough about me. I am super excited to talk to the three of you, and I want to start out by giving you space to speak a little bit about your work, what you do, and how you work and strive to ensure and design inclusivity in the programs that you put together. So I think I'll just start out by who's closest, who's next to me on my screen. I'd love, Brenda, if you want to kind of speak to that, your experience.
Yes. How do I ensure inclusivity in the program that I actually run? One of the things actually that I've tried so many different ways of getting people more inclusive in this work. Right now, I have went over and beyond doing extra. I have to say that I've had a lot of success in some of the methods that I've used. So I've did a lot of outreach. I know a lot of things are more electronic now. We're dealing with technology and things, but I'm old school. Right. And I know that sometimes old school reaches people that technology doesn't. So for me, I'm the person that go out and talk to high school students, pass out flyers, use any outreach necessary. I'll go to the neighborhoods, I'll hang flyers on doors, I'll put them under the cars, I'll go inside of the currency exchange, restaurants, churches, wherever, and have long conversations with people while they eat, while they pray, while they do whatever is necessary to try and reach the people in my own community, as well as some of the other communities that really don't know anything or even participate in nature. You know, a lot of times people, for me, in these communities were told, you don't need to be out in nature, you need to be in the house. you know, if you go to a forest preserve or a park district or something, you're being watched and monitored and it's dangerous and you should not do these things. Well, so for me, a little bit late in the game, I wish it was sooner that I got more involved, and I think I would have made an even bigger impact. But I have to say, since I've been working for a previous employer as well as Friends, I've actually gotten over 60 plus people of color in a lot of different communities, hired through these different organizations, different jobs, different, just all over, you know, and I don't want to take the credit for it because it takes a village, right? So it takes a team. So I want to say through the hard work and dedication that I've had at Friends, that we have reached a lot of different people, a lot of different community, a lot of different high schools. You know, we have developed so many different programs. We are trying to reach the people that wouldn't normally have access or availability to actually even learn to care about nature. It's our land, you know, and we are here to protect it, and we care about it, and we want to take care of it as we take care of our children. And so one of those things for me, I have children, I have 5 children. And so for me, it was almost like when I'm no longer taking care of the land, then I feel like I'm neglecting my children, so to speak. And so I make sure that even during COVID, that I was still going out, checking on my children that actually resides in the forest reserve. I want to say the plants and the native plants and the flowers and the grasses and the wildflower, all of those things I look at as if they're my children and I need to protect them and take care of them along with my own children. So yeah, that is really what keeps me. And that is really how I get out and I do as much advocating as I can. My main goal is to always try and provide a safe, healthy workplace. And so, yeah, that's.
Brenda, that's so beautiful. I got chills multiple times while you were speaking. It's really fantastic. And I, as someone who works with a lot of communities that are similarly not always online, not seeing things that are exclusively advertised on like Facebook or just posted on a website, the importance of going out with flyers and being in community with people and just like going where people are and having conversations, that's such an incredible aspect of community engagement that gets really overlooked a lot in the environmental field. And that's such an amazing amount of work and labor on your part, but building those relationships, I mean, the testament is in your results, right? Like 60 people placed into positions who would have been completely overlooked by this field, right? Who just needed to be outreached to and brought into the fold and connected. I think that's incredible. Wow, that's amazing. That's so fantastic. And I think it's exciting for us too, because as an environmental educator, like I think a lot about the kids I work with and seeing like the magic and the light in a kid's eyes when they discover something new outside or when they connect to something they wouldn't have seen just in their day-to-day life, and trying to find ways to continue to foster that when you don't have constant touch points with kids. It gives me a lot of hope that there are other people who are trying to connect youth and young people of color with these career pathways. That's so exciting. And I know there are a lot of other folks in the Chicago Wilderness Alliance working in similar ways. So amazing, amazing work. I think I'll move to CJ on the topic of youth and young people as a student, as another environmental educator, and working a lot around issues of accessibility and identity. How do you ensure inclusivity in your programs with youth?
Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing question to start with, right? When we're thinking about, working in facilitating programs that are meant to be inclusive for everybody, as like a disabled queer person, like it is a necessity for me to feel included in spaces. So it is meaningful for me to make those spaces for other people. I think with a lot of the programs that I've been facilitating here at Lincoln Park Zoo, I've been able to sort of like ensure, when we're out in the field doing work with students, are the sites that we're visiting like equitable and paved for people with mobility issues? Are there interpretive signs? Are there like guardrails? Are there benches? Because a lot of places where you do field work, there aren't benches. So, finding places just for, students and adults who are, supervising those students to be, finding the site accessible, it's also really important for me in terms of when I'm going to classrooms, to, work with teachers and their students to, find what is best. How can I access, the students in the best way possible? I think it's always really important to think about like asking people where they need to be met, like what needs are like I'm gonna get fumbled here. Like asking people what they need and then meeting them at it, right? I think that is something that is truly vital in terms of accessibility and inclusion. I do a lot of work outside of Lincoln Park Zoo. I'm on the leadership team, just like Dani, with Out in Nature, which is a queer affinity space here in Chicago. And one thing that has been really vital for me with Out in Nature is, again, making this space that is for queer people to have as like a designated, like this is a safe spot. And I know like safe space gets thrown around a lot, but like it's a little bit different in reality than it is sort of this like the meme that we sort of make it into. And so having a space for queer people by queer people, a space that is designed with inclusion and equity in mind by mostly environmental educators and activists and naturalists. We do a lot of incredible work. And then I also do some volunteering with Chicago Audubon. So I've been leading some accessible bird outings with them for maybe like the past year and a half. And that's really been really exciting to, I feel like birding gets a very like, sort of a bad like rap. Like when you picture a birder, you picture like an old white guy in a big hat with binoculars. And that's not really what birders look like in today's world. Birders come in all different shapes, sizes, and abilities. And it's finding spaces where people can enjoy nature. I think that's the key thing with any of this is how can we get more people to enjoy nature?
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of thinking back to what Brenda said too, it's like these spaces belong to all of us. And I'm not a big person, I don't believe that land really belongs to anyone, but that's getting into my politics. But it also is like something that unites all of us, right? Like we're all of this earth and we are a part of it. And so the idea that it's gate kept from certain people and very purposefully so is so unnatural, so deeply unnatural to keep people separate from what they're literally a part of. And to convince people that they're supposed to be separate from it. And then, all of the health impacts that come with that separation and not having access to clean, healthy environments, right? We see the repercussions of that.
Yeah, there's so much like research that just shows that like being in nature is good for everybody. I think that's gonna tie into what Vicky's gonna say in just a second. But yeah, I don't know.
Absolutely.
You gotta include people in nature.
Yeah, and I think I come back to this a lot. This is something that I believe Lorena Lopez from the Field Museum said at an event years ago that is stuck in my brain, which is that nature needs people as badly as people need nature, which I love because it's so true. It's like what Brenda was saying, right, about nature being this another child that she cares for. The non-human natural world needs us to be a part of it and needs us to be responsible caretakers. And the best way to do that is to help build these positive experiences so people want to take care of these spaces, right? They care about them, they're invested in their quality. And so many people care about these spaces already. They just may not be the ones who are invited into those spaces or included in the access of these spaces, right? It's like there's a lot of assumptions made about why people aren't in nature and no one really looking at the folks who are in nature who may be the ones keeping other people out of those spaces, right? But yeah, I think accessibility and physical accessibility is something that's been coming up a lot more lately, which is super exciting, seeing a lot of places including more adaptive equipment, more spaces for rest, like you mentioned, CJ benches, places to sit. So folks who may have more limited mobility can still go out into spaces and find places that they can take a beat, take a minute and recline. And so Vicky, I'd love to give you some space to answer this question from the perspective of your work with EAT.
Yeah, for sure. My brain started kind of going in all sorts of directions as you all were talking.
Chase it, do it.
But I want to try to keep this concise and, man, so many things to say. So yeah, nature has this natural healing power to it, right? So what we do is promote personal growth, social justice, and we do that through outdoor education and adventures. in an urban setting. So, you know, we talk about appreciating nature. I think Chicago River is a really great example of something that is very underappreciated, but as you get to know it more, you know, you get to, you know, that's the whole reason Chicago even exists, right? But it's very frowned, you know, oh, the river, I don't want to go near that. But it's the whole reason we exist. So we, you know, and the amount of nature you can see just going for a paddle, going for a walk, we have more natural spaces that allow us to do that now. But kind of taking a step back from that, you know, what we do in our organization, not only do we bring people out, I'm very passionate about the river. So when I take people out in the river, I tell them about the river. And in the time that I've been, you know, paddling in it, you know, I've seen the drastic change of like, you know, only seeing like a little bit of wildlife to now we have like literal otters in the city, right? It's been that wild. So one of the big things we try to do is try to remove some of those barriers, you know, to access these activities, right? So a lot of the people that we work with can't really afford to pay the full cost of what it takes to be in those activities. So we work on a sliding scale. We also at one point, you know, the founder's white and she's very aware that she's white, but her goal is to diversify the outdoors. That's what all of our goals is. That's why we're here. Right. So, you know, in the time that, you know, this is our 15th year anniversary. And in that time, it's gone from an all white staff to now having to change the models to be more inclusive. So to change that model, it's gone from, you know, licensed social workers to now leaning more towards social emotional learning. And that allows us to have staff that, you know, that may not have a 4-year bachelor's degree that then leads to a master's degree to get that license, you know, ... So now the staff is more diverse, so it's more representative of the people that we're working with and the different areas we're working with. You know, that's kind of like on a bigger scale. On a smaller scale, one of the things I like to do is, you know, typically we talk in English and then we say things in Spanish if we have a group that speaks in Spanish. Sometimes I like to flip that, you know, I like to flip that because, you know, why can't we do it in Spanish first and then in English second? You know, so things like that, making sure that we have the right equipment. So we often know that people can't always have, you know, don't always, you know, we'll show up in t-shirt and jeans for an activity that you really need athletic clothing for. So we make sure to provide the right clothing, you know, that includes shoes, that includes, you know, the shirt, shorts, socks, gloves, coats, whatever we need for that activity. And then we also make sure to do community festivals. And at these community festivals, we get to introduce people to, you know, the various activities that we do. So we literally bring kayaks with us and they can paint on there. They write inspiring words. It's fun, it's interactive. We bring climbing gear. They're able to, you know, feel what it's like, you know, to have a rope, a harness on and things like that. So it's, you know, some of that hands-on experience, and it allows the community to be able to ask these questions like, what is this? Why is this here? What is going to make me like, what's going to help me feel safe? You know, when it comes to the water, you know, a lot of people we work with don't know how to swim and are terrified of going into the water. And then we have, you know, some of the cultural stuff, you know, the hair, you know, some people can't get their hair wet. Parents are going to get mad, or, you know, they didn't have the right hair for that particular activity. And then being conscientious of, you know, the fact that, you know, these are things that we just, you know, work with, right? This is life. And then we just gotta figure out what solutions we can have. Maybe today you don't swim, but next time, you know, you can swim. So you get ready to be able to do that. So yeah, what else do I have in my notes? We also have, you know, you know, we also make sure to build staff up within the organization, right? So we have coaches within the organization, trained instructors, so people of color like myself who are out there actually doing these things. I can't tell you how many times I've had people tell me, oh, you're into white people sports, you're into white people things. And it's just like, no, you know, that's not really the case. There's a lot of people like me who are into this. It's just, we live in a city that, you know, doesn't necessarily promote that everywhere. I come from an immigrant family, so really you've been working towards being in a nice shelter inside versus, going outside and roughing it, while you're camping or whatever. There's glamping now too. So there's all these levels people also don't know about, right? There's like the really hardcore, like I'm going to do minimal things to like really like, I can just like, you can basically be living in a house, but you're outside, right? With, an open tent. I don't even know how to wrap this up. I just know that I'm very excited that we are having this conversation, because it's so important to, essentially I started this because I wanted to work with people who look like me, and I didn't have people growing up that were able to get me interested in the things I was interested in. I fell in love with kayaking, and, I didn't grow up with that. I didn't really discover it until my mid to late 20s. And I haven't stopped doing it since then. So anyway, what I'll say is, being representative of the people who you're working with, being open to other ideas that you haven't experienced before, compassion, empathy, all of those things are super important.
Beautifully put, Vicky. Absolutely. This is so exciting for me. I'm honestly I think I said this during our planning call, but I'm just jazzed to be at a point in my career where I get to be in spaces and positions to pull together a panel of people like you guys and say this is the group that's going to be represented and speaking. I definitely feel like when I first entered this field, which wasn't really that long ago, 6 years, I guess, since I've been out of college, but I just felt so outnumbered and out of place in so many spaces. I did not fit in. I didn't have the experience, the background, my connections to nature weren't as valid. But in just the last few years, seeing the turnaround and the flipping of scripts that's happening, especially in the Chicagoland region, is so exciting, because there are all these barriers that we spoke to, right, that are keeping people from these spaces. Everyone here has spoken to so many different aspects, from racial and economic barriers to physical barriers, literal physical site accessibility, right? Emotional barriers, how people feel in certain spaces, whether they feel welcome, whether they feel afraid, if they feel monitored and watched, which obviously ties back into race and justice issues as well. But I think something that came through everybody's comments is the need for that individualized approach, for meeting people where they're at and customizing that to the communities and the individuals you're working at and trying to reach, right? There is no one size fits all when it comes to community engagement, when it comes to inclusivity. It's about recognizing each whole individual and making sure that you have a situation, a culture, a space that can be suited to everybody, that's welcoming to everybody, and cares and prioritizes the safety and comfort of every individual that comes to that space, right? And I think that's so wonderful. I think, a few years ago, that seemed like a ridiculous request to some organizations and some people, you're making it too, it's too big of an ask, but really it's the only ask there is. That's all there is creating these spaces for people, because if we're not conserving nature for everybody, what are we conserving it for? It just doesn't make sense. Anyways, that's me rambling because I'm just inspired by all of you. But thinking on that individualized approach, the importance of, thinking about these different barriers and how you work in these specific scenarios to overcome them for certain populations, for certain specific audiences you're reaching. I'd love to know, for each of you, who or what has helped you feel a sense of belonging in this work. And we've spoken to this a little bit through our stories of who inspires us, but I'd love if you could share an example of a time that somebody made you feel like you belonged in this space or belonged in this field, and help inspire others to continue to create those moments for people. But I think I'll go backwards this time, Vicky, and I'll come back to you. I'll start with you.
All right, cool. So someone who said, I am new to this role as a director of operations. So I'm gonna do a shout out to the founder, and that's Andrea Nepper. She has certainly, I doubt myself a lot. And she has certainly, she does have that social worker mindset, because she is a social worker. And she, I'm always amazed by the deep understanding that she has by the struggles that, with the folks that we work with, she has such a deep understanding about, gosh, why am I stumbling right now? I got nervous all of a sudden. So
I put you on the spot. You thought you'd be third in line, and I just.
I think that's what it was. So I'm going to blame you for this one. I mean, she's very intentional with the way that she wants this organization to go. She's very intentional with who she wants to be part of this organization. She has a very deep understanding about the struggles that, people of color are experiencing. Sometimes she does a lot of knowledge dropping, and understands the importance of having people of color representing the work that we are doing, right? So all of these we're going through significant change right now in the organization. We've gone from working with, about 300 or so people in 1 year to now last year we worked with over 1,200 people, and so having to recreate, basically we're recreating the organization to be able to carry this work forward, right? It's pretty amazing to be part of this change right now, because it feels very unique. It feels genuine. It feels like I'm in a position to be able to make real change. My voice feels very heard right now. I feel like, it's not just, oh, you're like, for lack of a better term, I don't feel like a token. I feel like, we are in a position to be able to change people's lives, and, just yesterday hearing one of the mentors say, we were working with a group of gang affiliated young people, and just to hear the mentor say, we were building tents and we were building, learning how to build fires and shelters. And it was pretty amazing to hear the mentor say, it's so amazing to see these young people break from their persona that they've built up. They're like all rough and tough, like, whatever it is. And then they have this moment, like these moments as we're like, doing these different activities where they get to be themselves, like get to be young people. They can drop all of these, all these barriers that they've built up. And in these moments, they're able to just sit there, not sit there, but, have fun, poke fun at each other. Some of them got really into learning how to read the compass, asking more questions about, how, where you can use the tents. The young people were also, what is it, the striker? So they actually started a fire striker yesterday. I've never been able to do that. And they did that. That was the first time, I've been with a group that have been able to start a fire with a striker, and they couldn't stop playing with this thing. And it's pretty incredible to be part of this whole thing. And, really it's because Andrea has brought me into this team, has given me the space to be able to make mistakes and to grow. It's just a very different mentality than I'm used to in a work environment. You do something wrong, and then, it can lead to other consequences, right? Either you get a warning or someone gives you a really stern talking to or whatever it is. But she's very like, okay, so what happened? How can we how can we change this? It's different than what I've been used to. It's not like you get in trouble because you did something wrong right away. It's like, okay, it's okay. Something went wrong. How do we fix it?
Yeah. That collaborative leadership style is so important. Everybody does things wrong. I mean, we're human beings, right? It's the idea that like you have to be perfect and do everything in the most perfect and professional way constantly is one, an unattainable goal, and two, a product of like a white supremacist culture that prioritizes a very specific way of behavior that tells you exactly what is and is not proper. And a lot of times we don't have to get into all that. That could be a whole other panel, but I think that's really, really cool, Vicky. And I want to highlight too something you said about the difference between feeling like genuinely supported, uplifted, and spotlighted versus tokenized. And that can be so huge. I mean, I think most people who have some kind of marginalized identity can identify with the experience of being tokenized in an organization. And it's very palpably different being supported versus like somebody coming out to you being like, hey, it's Hispanic Heritage Month. Can we put a photo of you on the Instagram? And it's like, you could. You haven't wanted to put a photo of me on the Instagram any other month though. Interesting, you know? So I think there's definitely a difference between organizations who are trying to like display diversity versus organizations that are fostering a culture that supports and protects diverse employees. And I think that's so important to highlight. Yeah, I think I'll go to CJ next.
Yeah, I think in terms of the question, and I'm just going to pull it up here for myself, just like what is going to help me feel a sense of belonging in what I'm doing. And I feel like it's really twofold for me. I feel like on one end, it was knowing myself and my place in nature. And I feel like once I sort of like understood myself and I was able to sort of maybe like come out of, as who I am, that was really helpful for me in understanding myself. And then the other hand, it was seeing myself in nature. As a fat person, not really seeing myself in nature. As a queer person, I'm never seeing myself in nature. As a disabled person, I'm never seeing myself in nature. And it wasn't until I found, these spaces where I could actually see myself, did I actually feel included. And not only that, now I am that person. I am the person that people look to as like, CJ is leading this thing because CJ is always leading stuff. But it's good to be that person now because I didn't have that person for so long. So to be the person for so many others, again, that source of inspiration for me is those young people. I've worked with many young people who have like said to me like, oh yeah, CJ, you're my mentor. And I'm like, oh my God, stop. But it's really big. It really makes me feel like whole and complete because like I'm able to be the person that I didn't have. And that is enough. Because nature's for everybody.
That's more than enough. That's spectacular.
Yeah.
Y'all are gonna make me cry on this panel. I swear to God. I think that's so beautiful, and it's so true. I mean, I think all of us could speak to that moment when you meet somebody who is in a place that you've been in, and you see each other, and you get to be a presence that you wish you had when you were younger or when you were at a different point in your career. I definitely see it. Even just something as simple as when I introduce myself with pronouns in some rooms of young people, I can immediately see like the queer youth's eyes light up with excitement because they feel seen and recognized and know that they're going to be safe and held in this space with me as a queer and trans adult. And it's that simple. It's literally 2 words. And I immediately know I have made a child in this room feel safe, maybe for the first time that week, maybe for the first time ever in these spaces. And that's huge. And it can be as simple as, it's really just about having folks who represent communities that you're trying to reach be the ones that are working with communities that are in these positions, that are in paid positions with benefits and salaries, and that their time and effort is respected. But that's so beautiful. And Brenda, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Who or what made you feel a sense of belonging while doing this work, and how do you think others can do the same?
Okay, that is a 2-part question for me. What or who has helped me feel a sense of belonging while doing this work? Whew. I mean, I've had a pretty long stint in this here. So I'm not going to hold you all day. So what I will say is, when I talk about the what makes me feel a sense of belonging? Over the last, I'd say 12 years, what made me feel a sense of belonging is getting out and actually doing the work, actually putting the work in. And I'm going to say over at Spears Woods, as I'm thinking, just working over there and finding this hidden gem that no one knew exists. over there, you know, and clearing, oh my God, 10 acres, that 10 acres made a world of difference. And at the end of the day, being able to sit on the top of that ridge and experience the best part of nature that I have ever experienced in life. So that is my what. Seeing the progress, seeing how we walked in there and we were like, oh, this is, I can see, why won't they just get rid of it? It's like, and then after the work's been done and coming back a few years later, seeing the progress. Oh my God, that is my what. Seeing, again, watching your children grow, watching things just, the birds that show up now, all the invasive species is gone, just things of that sort, and just being so passionate about it. Riding up and down the expressways on things that you never knew existed and saying, oh, that's Phragmites, and you got your kids and your grandkids, and oh, that's this and that, and they're like, oh my God, and freaking out. And then being able to speak so highly of working outside and getting the work done, that then saying, hey, you all need to join in and get involved. And then having my doctor join in for the summer, who's now is right now in her last year of school becoming a doctor. And my son, like all of these things. So all of my kids, yeah, I was that mom to say, you need to come out and volunteer to get that new pair of gym shoes. I just didn't reward people for absolutely no reason. And then my who is, again, the people that I've invested in, the people who get on the phone and call me and say, you know, if it wasn't for you, Brenda, or if you hadn't did this, or if you didn't push so hard, I wouldn't stay. Because I look at you and I say, I can do this too. Or looking at some of those young girl faces who would say, oh no, I could never do that. I get my nails done every week and my hair. And I would say, so do I. And you know, you can get your nails done, your hair done, you can, everything that you normally would do. And to see them walk up and see me with my nails done and lashes on and all that, and I'm doing the chainsaw training, and everybody is like, who's the trainer? And I was like, me. And they're like, you're kidding. Yeah, it's me. And so I love that. So to me, that is my who. And just knowing when to say, I need a mentor. I need someone to help me. I need those tough days when I feel like the progression isn't happening quick enough. I want to see it faster. For them to say, slow down, it's here. You know, just someone that's, I want to say more, that had more privilege. I have to watch my words. They had a little bit more privilege growing up in nature than I had. And so when I say that, I like to say, I heard you, Ricky. Yeah. You want to see some people that look like you? That was my goal as well. I wanted to see some people that look like me. So I started out with my kids, and then my kids' kids, and then my daughter, and then my daughter's college roommate, and then, you know, and whoever else I could get. And I did whatever it was. And they knew that it was hard work, but hard work is exactly what you're doing anyway. You know, just encouraging them that cut the myths. It's not dangerous to walk. You don't, and that's all we were told. There's bodies, there's this, there's that, all type of things negative, but nobody was educating us on the positive things that were out there in nature. So what I had to do was grab a hold of someone that was gonna help me with the positive things in nature and explain to me the same way you have kids, they have names, trees have names, plants have names, they have families. All of these things are just important. And I wanted to share that with some of the young people. And so in doing so, my goal was to just make sure it didn't matter. Young people, I call them a little bit seasoned people, or whoever the people were, just making sure everyone was heard. You know, that's key. If they don't know, then we have to teach them. And when we teach and we educate and we do better for ourselves as we learn and we spread what we learn amongst where we know that there's no education on anything happening. Let's just be honest. You said gangbangers. Oh, every time you turn around, right outside our back door. People are shot, or you're trying to assist and doing all kinds of stuff because this is the way that they know. And so just being open for helping all people, you know, and just opening doors to help people that were a little less fortunate than myself, and teaching them about everything that I've learned, and just being open. And that's all, because we have 3 minutes.
Beautifully put, Brenda. Absolutely. Staying open. And when we say nature is for everyone, we mean everyone. You know, there's so much restoration and peace and tranquility that can be found in connecting to the natural world. And who needs that more than people who've been entrenched in violence, or incarcerated, or in situations where they've experienced intense trauma? The idea that nature can only be for like some mythical person who's made no mistakes and never gotten into any trouble and never done anything wrong is so backwards and weird, and just gross. But there's also so many cool groups that are using nature now too as a means of restorative justice and reintegrating people into the world after facing something traumatic like incarceration or like being involved in gang violence. And I think there's so much more power and potential when we look at all of these moments as opportunities, and when we look at all of these problems in our society as connected, right? When we can recognize that the separation of people from the natural world is also tied to our economic issues, it's tied to race relations, it's tied to everything, and it all comes back together in the other forms of problems that we see prevalent in our society. And when we can start to look at things more holistically and think about how we can work together to solve these problems, there's just so much opportunity. I think sometimes people think that like intersectionality and like this kind of collaboration is too daunting because there's too much, but it's all so much simpler when you like condense it into one shared problem, because then everybody can pitch in and work on it together. And to me, that makes a lot more sense, but I don't know. All that is to say. I had another question for you guys, but everyone kind of answered it, really speaking to, you know, the experience of someone who's really benefited from your inclusive approach to programming. But I think I heard from all of you some really inspiring stories of folks who saw themselves in you, who felt seen by you, people who felt safe to have a moment to be a kid in your space. And I just want to thank you all for the work that you're doing, for taking time to talk about this with me and entertain all of my questions and my ramblings in between, because you guys inspire me and make me want to talk about this for like 4 more hours. But I'll be a generous moderator and say we can open up to some audience questions if anybody has anything they'd like to ask Brenda, CJ, or Vicky, or myself. I think Radhika is monitoring the chat for us, so we can give a second.
Okay, that was really wonderful. Thank you so much. I could also spend all day, and maybe we should set up something where we all spend all day together sharing our experiences and perspectives. That would be amazing. So we have one question in the chat. Anybody else has questions, please do write them into the chat. But this one is, this is a question for everyone. I'm curious about the ways you follow up after somebody participates in a program or event for the first time. So how do you continue the relationship, I guess, after that initial touch point?
I can go first on that one. I'll make it really quick because I realize we only have 8 minutes left. For us, we have what's called adventure communities or family adventures. So after folks have graduated from whatever program they're in, so we partner with the nonprofits, or when we run into folks in the community, we don't want the access to what we offer to end there. So we make sure to keep it accessible in the adventure communities for them to continue coming back to us at no cost to them. So that's my quick and easy answer, I suppose.
I can answer that as well. So one of the things that we've done and we're continuing to do is have alumni groups. And so anyone that has worked with us through the past, twice a year, we try and schedule some type of kind of group work day for all of our alumni as well as our staff, if they can participate. So yeah, we definitely have a line of communication. We keep their emails, we stay in touch, and most of them actually still reach out to me and talk to me and see how things are going at Friends. So yeah, we have a definite keep in touch basis type system set up for us right now. Thank you.
For a lot of the things that I lead outside of the zoo, so things like with the Audubon Society, things like with Out in Nature, I think Out in Nature, we're working on like some post-event surveys, so that is in the works if you're a fan of Out in Nature. But I think it's just a lot of anecdotal stuff for those things, like, hey, what did you think about how the event went? Like, how are you feeling? But specifically here at Lincoln Park Zoo, we actually have a whole evaluations team who works to evaluate our programs, which is really, really amazing. So in our learning department here at the zoo, we have a team of some incredible people who work to help evaluate our programs and see what we can do better. So yeah.
I'll say too, from my perspective at Brushwood, working with students in terms of following up, a lot of our work comes from the relationships we built with community organizations. I don't run my own youth programs where I register students, but I go into existing youth organizations, after school programs, et cetera, and I facilitate programs. And we try and build very long-term, authentic relationships with these partners so that we are working with students repeatedly over the years. So a lot of times we'll follow up with the partners since they have more constant touch points with students and their families, and check in and ask how they felt about the programs, what kind of interest they're getting from students and families, questions related to nature or health that we could try and explore together. So it's really a lot of, and I think from what everyone has said, there's a lot of relationship building that comes into it. And that's the important part, is having those strong foundations rooted in that mutual interest and connection, making sure people know that you're not asking because you're trying to fulfill a grant requirement, but they know that you're genuinely curious about their experience. You're trying to improve something for the next person or for the next time they come through. So I feel like that always helps in the follow-up. And then having these affinity spaces, alumni groups, Facebook chats, whatever, group chats, places for people to connect informally can be so beneficial. There's a WhatsApp group for the Out in Nature chat, and sometimes people will just post in there and be like, I found a weird thing. What is it? It's really cute. And immediately a bunch of queer naturalists are like, whoa, a butterfly. So it's nice just to create those moments of community. And I think it's a really great way to keep people engaged too. So that's awesome. I love hearing the different strategies you guys have. Any other questions in our final moments? Did we solve everybody's qualms and problems today? No questions. It's so funny. Look at us.
I think so. I think we've done, everything's good now.
I do feel like if we had a million more Brendas, CJs, and Vickies, we would solve all the world's problems between that group, but
we just need to clone
we
them.
figure out cloning. We have our first 3 candidates. Well, amazing. I want to thank everyone again. A round of virtual applause for our wonderful panelists. And Radhika, thank you, my co-chair, and Laura Riley and Lake from CWA for running the background. We appreciate you. And Brandon Hayes from Bold Bison, we appreciate you too. He's been helping lead a lot of the Green Vision Initiative projects. If you want to learn more about Chicago Wilderness Alliance, you can follow us on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn. Also, Radhika and I will be leading our next quarterly meeting for the Increasing Equitable Access to Nature initiative, May 19th. So if you drop your name and email in the chat, we can add you to the email list. We'll be sharing more info about that, but we will be discussing our goal and strategies for increasing equitable access to nature as an alliance, and creating some working groups at that next meeting. So that you can learn a little bit more, join us, learn a little bit more about what we're trying to do, help us build this culture of inclusivity and belonging that our panelists spoke to, and expand accessibility and inclusion in the environment in Chicagoland and beyond. The Chicago Wilderness Region spans into Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin. So lots of space for collaborations and partnerships. Radhika, am I missing anything?
Yeah, come join our revolution. We are we are making changes, and we would love to have more people join us. And I would also say, panelists, if you don't mind, anybody on the call wanting to reach out to you for more information, if you wouldn't mind putting your email in the chat, that way they can follow up with more questions or more learning from you.
Absolutely. And if you have any other questions too about this initiative or the work we're doing with Chicago Wilderness Alliance, feel free to reach out to me as well. Always happy to chat. But all in all, thank you everyone for joining us on this Thursday afternoon. This is like so healing and restorative at the end of like a kind of long week for me. Not the end, but you know, the end. There's one more day. And I just really appreciate you all for sharing the time and space and all of your talent and visions. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Dani, for having us. Thank everyone that played a part in this. And I just want to leave everyone with, always know that when you're moving forward, there's progression. You don't have to be perfect. We're not living in a perfect world and we're not perfect human beings. So just keep in mind that as long as you're taking a step forward every day and moving in the right direction, you're perfect enough. So don't even strive for perfection. It's not going to happen. Stay where you're at. Take one step every day and you're moving in the right direction. Don't beat yourselves up. Don't, you know, be your biggest critic. Let's love on ourselves so that others learn to love us as well. That's all. Thanks.
Brenda, I'm so glad we're recording this because I'm gonna like play
Beautiful.
that back later when I need a pep talk. That's really wonderful.
Where can I find
Everyone,
Brenda?
everyone take that forward into your weekend and
Thank you
beyond.
so much for having us also. And thank you so much for moderating so well and for even holding this conversation. This was really amazing.
Yeah, this was absolutely fabulous. Thank you all so much for being here, and thanks CWA for hosting.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being a part
We'll
of
see
it.
y'all.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Have a good